Hi, welcome to episode 162 of the Artcasters. This is the show that alternates between myself and Scott Cirkland's channel. Welcome to episode. Whoa, I'm getting slapback, so give me 1 second. There we go. Okay, that was actually, I just had forgotten to put the chats on mute, which is an old school mistake. So you can do 162 of these things and still make that mistake. Anyhow, so so this is the show that alternates between Scott Cirkland and myself's channel, and we usually have a special guest on, alternating every week, and we'll get into introducing our guest. But as usual, I guess we should probably start by just saying where you can find us. So you're on my YouTube channel, so if you haven't subscribed yet, you should subscribe, hit that bell. You'll get notifications every time I update. And then Scott, where can we find your work, sir?
You can find me at Serkworks.com, SERKWORKS. And while you're there, you can pick up the Comic Maker Starter Kit. It's free if you want to learn how to make comics. We can do this every time. Yes, it is free. But yeah, there's tons of tools, digital tools for making comics and everything like that. And yeah, it's just right there on the homepage. And also on YouTube, you can find me at Serkworks on YouTube.
Awesome. And then our special guest, for those of you who follow my channel, should be pretty familiar. It's Corey Kerr, my buddy from the 48-Hour Art Check, and also frequently on Artcasters as well. So, Corey, where can we find your work, sir?
You can find my work at CoreyKerr.com, CORYKERR.com. And I'm on YouTube and Instagram and a little bit on Twitter. And so, yeah. So mainly YouTube and Instagram.
Awesome. You guys should check out his stuff. Corey's got a ton of like amazing tutorials, particularly on like After Effects, but also on Illustrator and other Adobe programs, and just general all over kind of expert, really interesting YouTube channel. So go subscribe if you haven't already. Today I'm just going to do this as the lead into our topic because I think it goes pretty well. But today is day 4 of my 100 days of making comics, because I think I idiotically started a day earlier than everybody else. And the 100 days of making comics challenge is something we've all done, and basically we're all starting because we're all going to be in an anthology that's collecting a bunch of short comics done by a whole ton of cartoonists. And so since we're all kind of just gearing up and starting off on this thing, some of us at different points, I think a lot of us are probably plotting or working at our story in an early form. I thought it would be a really good topic. So to start it off, Scott, do you want to kind of explain the 100 days?
So the 100 Days of Making Comics was started by Kevin Cross, and basically he was just trying to come up with a plan to be more productive in creating his comic book. So I think from what I understand, he adapted some kind of other 100-day challenge. It was like a workout challenge or health challenge, and he just adapted it to comics, and he started doing it and not thinking anyone would probably care or not, and people did care, and more people, myself included, kind of started doing it, and then it just grew to this thing where now there's been literally hundreds of people taking on this 100-day challenge. But the gist of it is that you spend at least 30 minutes a day every day working on your comic book project, and then you vlog about it or talk about it, or whatever you want to do, but just let people kind of know your progress and everything. And then you do that for 100 days straight, and at the end of those 100 days, you've made a lot more progress on your comic book. So that's kind of the idea behind it. As far as the anthology was, I guess it was like Mike Emmerich's, Chris McQuinlan and Marshall Lee, I think. I don't know if they came up with I don't know where the idea originated from, but I know they kind of headed the first one up, and then kind of Mike took the lead. And so Mike's like the kind of the brains behind it, and kind of wanted to get him on to kind of kick this whole thing off, because I think the idea moving forward for a little bit is there's so many creators that are doing this challenge that we'd like to get some of these different creators on the show kind of moving forward for a little while while we're doing that, kind of find out what their process is and what they're working on and all that kind of stuff. But anyway, yeah, we wanted to kind of get Mike on to introduce it, but he's got a lot of stuff going on. I think he's getting married and everything. So we'll have him on soon, but we just thought, well, you know, Josh, Corey, and myself, we all got selected to do this challenge. And one of the, I guess it's still a challenge, but to be featured in this anthology. And I guess the main thing is, in order to be considered to be in the anthology, you have to have successfully completed the 100 Days of Making Comics challenge. And that's not really an easy feat. A lot of people have tried and not been able to complete it. But then again, some people have done it multiple times. So, but each of us have done the challenge. So yeah, there was, did we mention that this is the second time around? This is the Anthology 2.
Yes.
The first time there's a theme to each one. The first theme was life in space. This time around, it's werewolves and unicorns, or sort of more broadly, just mythical creatures. Yeah, we all got selected to be in this, which is super cool. In addition to that, I'm going to be doing the cover, which I have no idea what I'm going to do yet. I haven't really given it any thought at all. So, we each have to do a 4-page story. And do you guys know about how many people were selected to be in this one? A lot more, because I know before it was 6 pages, and then they had such an outcry of people that wanted to be in it. So they got as many people as they could in to do a 4-page story. But even with that, some people weren't selected. So. Like I said, it's just a crazy big community now. It just continues to grow. So,
yeah, and it's a pretty long list of contributors from what I recall, and I'm just gonna pretend I know, but without being able to pull up the doc on it, I think there's about, like, is it almost like 40 people, or am I exaggerating? I think
it seems like a lot, but maybe, I don't know.
Yeah, it's pretty far up there, and we'll get more specifics and stuff when we have some of the guys involved, like maybe Marshall or you know, like definitely Mike would be good to have on, just to kind of clarify. But anyhow, so we're all kind of working on these things, and in the meantime, we're also all working on our own creative projects. And so I think a couple of the things I want to get into are like what the parameters are for the story, and then kind of how you come up with, like, how you're plotting it, what your kind of game plan is to get it done. Because I think the deadline is April, right? Or am I wrong?
I think so. It's basically 100 days from January 1st. So
April 11th.
Yeah, which I think is a little over 100, but it's close.
Yeah. So in order to get that done, and then also kind of balance that with the other creative work we're doing, including our own personal creative projects, to me, I think would be a good thing for us to touch on too. So I know for myself, like when this came up, I was really stuck on the theme for a while because I wasn't really feeling it. Okay. Peter in the chats just clarified. It's 31 people in the book, and he's stoked that you're doing the cover, Scott. And then Keeman says hi, and Tim said hello. So welcome to the chats and stuff, and thanks for joining, guys. So like for me, the thing that was really hard was, like, initially was just trying to decide on what I was gonna do for the story, because I wasn't like super 100% like for my own style and stuff. It was a tough thing to figure out until I kind of realized there's this little loophole in the description of the project where the theme is supposed to be based around werewolves and unicorns, but you can actually do anything mythologically related. And for me, that was kind of like the beginning of starting to make that work. I don't know about for you guys, like how you went about kind of coming up with a story based around the theme.
Yeah, I'm right there with you, Josh. I was not like a big fan of the theme. I guess it's some inside joke or something. From what I understand, somebody in the first round of 100 Days of Making Comics was sort of maybe disenchanted because they didn't get chosen or something, and said, well, I don't like doing werewolves and unicorns. So I don't know what that meant, but so as a joke, I guess that kind of, but so yeah, I mean, I haven't really made much bones about the fact that I wasn't crazy about that. Cause I mean, it is cool that you have limitations. I mean, limitations can create creativity, but I think with the last one being Life in Space, it was pretty wide open. So, I mean, I thought they should have went with something a little broader. Like I think Marshall threw out the theme of Tales of the Cryptid. And I love that idea because it's kind of the same thing that we're working with. Yeah. And I don't know how many people actually knew about what you're calling kind of a loophole. Yeah, I knew from the beginning because I told Mike, I said, yeah, I'm just not feeling the werewolves and unicorn thing. So I don't know if I'm going to do this. And he said it was basically any kind of mythical creature. So, but so, yeah, I mean, it's, I kind of wish it was a little more obvious that it was a little broader subject, but that's all right. I mean, I kind of felt weird because when I saw all the ideas coming in, it seemed like everyone was doing werewolves and unicorns. I'm like, did they not get the memo that you can do something else? But so.
Yeah, I don't even mind the theme so much for other people. It was just like for myself. Yeah. Felt really like out of the wheelhouse of anything. I didn't have any sparks of ideas come from that. So when I saw that part that I hope, was just basically like saying anything mythological, I was like, oh, thank goodness. But even then I was like, so the werewolves and unicorns felt too kind of restricted. And then I felt like with mythology, it was just too much. It was like, what kind of mythology? Because I love mythology. Do I want to do?
I think it has to technically. I think it's limited to mythological creatures.
Yeah.
I don't think you could do like Perseus. Unless I guess if he's fighting a mythological creature or something.
Yeah. But still, it's like, do you want to go like Greek, creatures, or do you want to go like Egyptian? Like, do you want to go like what era do you want to go in? And for me, like my main interest, as I've talked about a lot on here, is like doing auto-bio stuff. So finally I was trying to think, well, how could I do like something that's auto-bio but mythological and still kind of fits to like the whole kind of true life type thing. And I realized like I'm just going to do it based on kind of my kid's relationship with his stuffed animal, which I'm like, I know is tried and true territory because of Calvin and Hobbes. But I didn't even think of that connection until like when I was writing it. I was like, oh, that could kind of seem a little Calvin and Hobbes-ish. But my son's like obsessed with this puppet stuffed animal he has of a dinosaur, and we kind of play games, and half the joke of like and why he likes playing with dinosaurs because dinosaur kind of doesn't follow the rules. So dinosaur is kind of like a rule breaker. So like if my son's having trouble getting to bed, I'll kind of pretend that dinosaur is having trouble getting to bed and like ask Benji to help dinosaur get to bed, and he'll end up getting to bed that way. And that kind of weird relationship kind of sparked this story idea for me. And I was like, oh, I could just change it to like a dragon and there's my story, And then it was just a matter of like trying to kind of bullet point it. But it literally took me till because our deadline for that was the 1st. And it literally took me till the 31st to like finally just buckle down on that, because every time I was like researching different myths and stuff like that, I was like, wish I could just do a story about this. And then finally I was like, you know what, if that idea isn't kicking and we're like at that last bit, I ought to stick with it, So anyhow, so that's kind of how I came up with my concept. I think Scott, like, well, actually we should go to Corey and then Scott, but Corey, how did you come up with your concept?
My concept was I am notoriously indecisive, and so I did see the memo that you could kind of do any type of creature, but I hate drawing horses, and so I immediately started trying to figure out a way that I didn't have to draw a unicorn a bunch of times. And so I figured the next best thing is, because I love seafaring stories, and so the next best thing for me was doing a narwhal, right? And so a narwhal is that whale, kind of, it's a beluga cousin, but its left incisor tooth pokes through its face, and it actually looks like this giant unicorn horn. And actually, back in the day, you had people that would hunt narwhal, take their tusk and sell it as a unicorn tusk that they've killed. And so that's like the narwhal fueled the myth of the unicorn, because it's a spiral, thing, all that. Anyway, so then I started coming up with excuses on how to like work a narwhal into a story. And about that time is when I saw that you could kind of do any mythological creatures. And so instead of choosing a single mythology, like, Japanese or, or American or European or Greek or Roman or whatever, I decided that I would just do all of them. And so I came up with this concept of having one of my favorite books is Moby Dick. And one of my favorite authors is Joseph Conrad. Joseph Conrad writes like The Heart of Darkness and things like that. And so I'm using like this storytelling technique that Joseph Conrad used in a short story called Youth. And if you guys haven't read Youth, you have to go read it. But it's this old guy, this old sailor who's in a pub telling the story of one of his first voyages. And so you have like the concept of like the unreliable narrator. He kind of skips around, because people can kind of skip around, when they're telling stories. And so it gives you the ability to have like a very compressed story, because that's something I struggle with. And then I'm combining that with Moby Dick. So I'm having in Moby Dick, the gist of it, spoiler alert if anybody hasn't read that and is looking to read it, you have a bunch of people. It famously starts with Call Me Ishmael. Is this guy who is he gets kind of pissy, gets angry if he's on land too long, and so every time he starts to feel this certain way, he like goes and joins a ship crew and goes out. And he had never been whaling before. And so he goes out whaling, and he happens to join a crew of Captain Ahab, who's like the prototypical pirate kind of captain that everybody like thinks of today. He's got a peg leg. He's got like the grizzly beard. He's got the, swashbuckling like stuff. Anyway, they called him Old Thunder. He has this vendetta against this whale, and that took his leg. So long story short, the whale kills everybody except Ishmael. Because of, and it's this whole allegory about being consumed by vengeance and fixated on something that isn't worth achieving, and that type of thing. So anyway, with all of that, I thought it would be kind of funny to have Captain Ahab come back from the dead and raise Ishmael from the dead, to use Ishmael's luck, and then gather a crew of other creatures that like would have very specific skills that would make them really good at different positions. And so, like I'll go through my list here, but I've got like a pilot. The one who's driving the ship and steering the ship is a vampire, because they can see really well in the dark. I've got a team of nymphs that are able to control the sea to help with propulsion. For carpenters and blacksmiths and coopers, the kind of all the crew that kind of fixes things when they break. Because if you're out in the ocean and something breaks, you have to be able to fix it or you die. I'm having brownies. So brownies are those little creatures that like just are compulsively fix things and tinker with things and make things better as long as you don't piss them off. And then I'm having a dwarves as marines. And so like if you're boarded by pirates or if you're going to overtake and attack another vessel, you have kind of a small crew of kind of fighting men, marines, like soldiers. And draugs, which is it's a specific type of zombie that comes from the folklore of the Viking folklore. You have draugs, which kind of has kind of a Frankenstein element where they piece together the corpses of warriors and raise them from the dead and bewitch them to be kind of undead. And so the draugs are going to be the harpooners. And then I have kind of a sea witch that is gonna be kind of mystical defense because they're going to run into a bunch of things. A pod of mermaids that also are able to kind of fight off things that might attack them from beneath. And then the like Yeti and things like that for like harpooners and things. And so they're going to come up against Maenads and golems and gnomes, and then have kind of this big culminating battle against Poseidon's wife, Amphitrite or Amphitrite. I don't know how to pronounce it. And so I kind of my concept came through in that I couldn't decide on what single or 2 or 3 different cryptids to go with. So I went with as many as I can possibly fit in. And so this page that I'm sketching out now actually is going to have kind of the cast and the crew here. And so you have the story starts out with Ishmael on a Zaratan, which is like one of those giant sea tortoises that is often mistaken for an island. And there's a pub on the Zaratan in the middle of the Bermuda Triangle, or what used to be called the Devil's Triangle. And he starts this tale saying, "Call me undead. They used to call me Ishmael." And so then he goes through and he talks about kind of being raised by Ahab, and he's still trying to figure out why all of this is happening. And then right here, I'm going to have like, they used to do these old maps where they would have these illustrations and they would have little pop out things with these like scrolls, and the scrolls and ribbons would have like inscriptions talking about like who the captain was or who the, different characters on the ship that did things or that were able to do the map or the, the whatever. And so that's going to introduce the crew. And then at the end, they find this narwhal, and the twist is that they don't kill it. They arm it with lodestones. They have this sea witch curse this lodestone, and then this siren starts leading this armed narwhal straight towards the Devil's Triangle to do something. And so and I kind of leave that a little vague because this is kind of it's kind of a snapshot of what's kind of going on in a greater thing. But anyway, so my problem is that I came up with like a 300-page epic.
That's what I was going to say. Did anyone tell you that it's 4 pages?
Right. And I figured it out. It's going to be, have you guys ever watched Legend of the Sword by Guy Ritchie? It's the King Arthur.
No.
Thing. Okay. Well, Guy, if you've seen a Guy Ritchie movie, he has these moments that he slows down, and they're really interesting. But then, like, he speeds through all of the stuff all the character building, all of the stuff that, like, normally would take, like if Peter Jackson were doing it, it would take 12 hours to do. He compresses everything into 90 minutes by speeding past this. And so I'm actually going to have these 2 pages in the middle be this giant montage that if you wanted to expand it, you could have, I mean, there's going to be about 12 different battles that they have at sea. And then, but because it's being told by this drunken sailor, he kind of just brushes over it really fast. Like, yeah, we ran into some Nolums and some gnomes, and fought a Yeti, and then, Poseidon's wife showed up, and so there's these just going to be these snapshots of all of these different battles kind of in kind of like a montage style. And so you'll get a glimpse, but not like a sequential story of this giant epic, but it's really going to be very compressed. And then I'll slow down at the start and then slow down at the end. But in the middle, it's just going to be this giant montage of battles that they had to do, kind of like a Homeric epic or the Iliad, where they're trying to get home, but it's as if you told it just really fast. It's the Twitter version of the story, I think.
I like that solution. It still sounds like quite a challenge, and I'm really excited to kind of see how it comes out, because I'm sure it's going to look awesome. The thumbs look awesome. In the chats, Tim was saying I think he likes the huge squid. And then yes. He was saying, do you have a kraken? And then what else? Well, do you have a kraken?
Yeah, there'll be a kraken and the giant squid. I don't want to have too many giant creatures because, everything would be giant. But at the end, there is kind of a hint towards the reason that the Devil's Triangle has so many deaths is because the scientists think it's magnetic polarity that throws everybody's compasses off. But Ishmael says there's a line in here. He says, of course, that's just what the scientists say. Any sailor worth his salt knows that the wounded, captured Titans have been leaking ichor for centuries. And so ichor is the blood of the gods in Greek and Olympic kind of type of thing. And so the idea is that in any sea anomaly, there's a buried, captured Titan that's kind of wounded and just bleeding into the ocean, causing all kinds of abnormalities and things like that. And so that's kind of the final thing. So I don't want too many giant things, but I will have hints towards escaping krakens and giant squids and fighting all kinds of weird, because there's seahorses. There's lots of really cool things in any coastal culture, like Ireland, or they all have all these things. And so the seahorse is a fascinating Celtic monster that's made of water. Anyway, and so there'll be lots of things like that.
That's exciting, and it sounds fun as hell to draw. Although, like I said, challenging. So that's awesome. So I want to get to Scott's story, but I also want to make sure we're giving attention to everybody in the chats. So, okay, so I think I mentioned Matthew's working on his 4-page story, Matthew Angstrom, while listening to the show. Good. If you're in the hundreds, you should be working on it. It's your one of your days. Get your stuff done. Let's see. Okay, we answered the cracking question, and then Pepper said hi, and that she's glad we're talking about the hundreds anthology, and then Peter said it's always fun to see artists approach the same theme differently, and I totally agree. I think that's a really fun thing. So Scott, okay, so we have a crazy, awesome kind of complex sea epic. And then a kind of very simple kid's story. What do you got? What are you working on? And then how did you arrive at it? And also, was it really hard to kind of come up with an idea for it?
No, it wasn't, because I'm not writing it.
Nice.
I'm adapting it from lyrics from a Police song. There's a song called Synchronicity 2 that I remember liking the song when I was a kid and watching the video, and the video is kind of this weird, and this is back in the 80s, so I mean, take it for what it's worth, but it's kind of this weird kind of, I guess, post-apocalyptic kind of world that they're in, kind of like a Mad Max type thing. And so I just thought it was kind of cool. And then later on, I kind of actually listened to the song, and the song has nothing to do with the video. It's a really dark story, and it kind of deals with this these two simultaneous things happening, hence the name of the song Synchronicity. But one of them is sort of this guy, this who's sort of just kind of goes to work, does his thing, comes home, he's got a family, he's, just kind of this humdrum kind of life and everything. So you're listening to his story, while at the same time, I mean, something's building within this guy. He's about to basically crack. And as that's going on, in the second story is basically like the Loch Ness Monster kind of rising from the deep and coming up, and it all culminates in the father coming home to his home and the creature approaching this cottage in Scotland, and it kind of ends there, and you kind of get the impression that something real bad's going to happen. So, but I always kind of, even though it's really dark, I kind of always, I like that idea of these two things happening at the same time, and kind of how they, mirrored each other and everything. So that's kind of the story that I decided to go with. Now, since I am adapting it from lyrics to a song, I'm not going to, the lyrics won't actually be in the story. It's going to be all pantomime, because obviously you get into some issues with copyright and stuff if you do that. But so it's just kind of inspired by that. So that's what I'm working on. That's at first they kind of had changed some things around, because at first it was a six page story. So at that time I had it all plotted out, and like, okay, because there's 3 verses, and I thought each verse I could break into 2 pages, and then it got cut down to 4, and I'm like, oh, what am I going to do? And then and then I was told, so then I started kind of figuring this out, and I kind of wanted to try to figure it out. So, you get that last page turn, and there would be sort of this reveal. But then I was told that there isn't any page turns, that it's basically 2 spreads. So that was sort of a challenge, but now I think I kind of like it. I've roughly thumbnailed everything out. You won't be able to make any of this out because it's so scribbly, but I've got my 2-page spread here. So what I'm doing is and I'm taking advantage of the spread. So the first number of panels will go across the whole. I mean, you're going to read from one page into the next. It's not going to be like, you're reading a single page, and then on the opposite side of that page is another page. It's all, everything interconnects. So it's like 2 giant. I guess it wouldn't be double. I don't know if you consider, it's not a splash page. Obviously there's tons of panels and everything. But so far I think I'm liking it. So I don't know. I've got a long way to go, I think. But the other thing I'm trying to do right now, well, this I did traditionally with thumbnails, but I'm trying to do pretty much most everything digital this time around, because I just got to get used to at least, well, not everything, I should correct that. Just the thumbnails I want to do, not thumbnails, the sketching and everything I want to do all digital. But then I'm going to print those out, and I'm going to ink by hand, because I think I want to try to do some really cool stuff with ink and some different techniques that I don't really do on Young and the Dead. So hopefully this is going to look quite a bit different. It's going to be a total departure from what I'm doing with my, a regular comic. So
that's awesome.
Yeah.
So did you start the thumbnails before the 100 days, or like?
No. I just actually did I do those today? I think I did them today.
Wow, that's awesome, man. So you have a good start on it.
Yeah, they're so rough though, and I want to really do some cool stuff with the panels. So this is sort of a guide. I'll probably do 1 or 2 more rounds of thumbnails. I know that seems kind of weird because thumbnails are, but as far as right now, it's just kind of placing the characters in the scenes, but I really want to figure out like which way I want them facing. I want, what expressions they're going to have, because there aren't any words. I have to tell everything with expressions and visuals.
Yeah.
So I want to make sure that all makes sense.
Yeah, that's going to be awesome as a wordless comic, and that's really hard to pull off. So that sounds like quite a challenge as well. That's awesome.
Yeah, I think the only words that'll be there is there's a line in the story anytime they switch from scene to scene, it says many miles away. So that's the only thing I'm probably going to put in there, and that'll probably be the title of the story too. So
that's awesome.
Yeah.
And so when you were coming up with that, like deciding to kind of illustrate that song, was that like right after they announced the theme, or was it when you found out you could do more mythology?
I don't know what it connected, because I have been wanting to adapt that song for a long time to a comic book.
Yeah.
And then I don't know and then I think it was when, like I said, Marshall, people were throwing out different ideas for the theme.
Yeah.
And I think Marshall threw out Tales of the Cryptid, and I'm like, oh, I hope it gets that, because I got the perfect thing for that. And then when it didn't get chosen, it was Werewolves and Unicorns. I'm like, oh man! But then Mike said that it was a little broader than that, and you could use other mythical creatures. And because this story I've been wanting to tell for so long just happened to have the Loch Ness Monster in it, which I don't really like. I'm not crazy about the visuals that we've seen of the Loch Ness Monster. To me, it doesn't look that threatening.
Yeah,
it looks kind of like a brontosaurus from what you see. So. Yeah. It's going to be sort of like an Aliens thing where you don't really see it so much.
Yeah.
But I want what you do see of it. I want it to look a lot more menacing than what you typically think of with the Loch Ness Monster.
Yeah, I mean, the way I think with the Loch Ness Monster, just the way you're describing it, I'm just imagining like you probably are going to be doing a lot of not showing, but kind of showing.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, I think that's the way to make Nessie a little scary, is to like play up the mist and the mystery of it. Yeah, it's funny. I don't know why for me that was such a just hard thing to kind of pin down. I think it's because much like Corey, it's I had a very similar like want to kind of do all the mythology, and for me, the weird thing is I ended up arriving at kind of what you're describing, which is a story that I've kind of wanted to tell before the hundreds, and because I'm kind of knee deep in my own story, I just didn't know when I'd have the opportunity or the time, and so I was like, oh, this can actually work. I think that's a good tip for people. If you're struggling, like coming up with something to work on or coming up with like a project, it's like give yourself a limitation, like a theme. And what you'll find is when you start looking into it, you might come up with ideas that you're not so fond of, but the one that sticks, or if better yet, it might bring to light like some stories you've really wanted to tell. And then you can make those work for whatever it is that you're doing. So like to me that ended up being a really good thing. So all right, so that's kind of how we came up with our stories. So scripting, how do you guys approach scripting on a thing like this? I actually personally want to say I don't think the deadline's all that crazy. I don't want to sound bad, but it's like I think 100 days is plenty of time to do 4 pages.
Yeah, because they're also going off of the same time frame. Just I think because it's 100 days, so they're going to keep it with that theme. Yeah. But before it was a 6-page story. Now it's a 4-page story, so it's a little different. Yeah.
Six would have been hard to kind of make work, but because of that, what I've been doing for my 100 days is I'm still maintaining my daily output on my regular comic. And so I put in at least 30 minutes a day on that, usually a lot more, and get at least one panel done, like one panel of progress. And then on top of that, I'm trying to spend at least 30 minutes on my hundreds anthology project a day. So that's kind of what I'm going to try to do. We'll see if it kind of all peters out towards the end. But so far, I'm not even like tagging the stuff I'm doing for my comic on those 100 days as part of the hundreds thing, because I want it to just be about the anthology stuff. But I don't know why in my head it just seemed like a good idea to kind of separate the two, because I didn't want it's weird, but anytime there's a project that's like this, that's really fun and cool, I don't want it to slow the momentum on my main thing. And so I was going to kind of ask you guys a little bit about that. Like, what do you do to kind of maintain your momentum on personal projects when dealing with another personal project like this? Do you kind of put the brakes on everything, or do you kind of find a way to balance the two? And then if so, like, what any tips on that for like people, maybe other people in the anthology undergoing this or whatever? You got any tips?
Well, for me, I made it a point to wrap up issue 4 of Young and the Dead before I started that. That was a big thing that I said I have to. I know not everyone's in the position where they can do that. Certainly you aren't, Josh, because you're doing a way longer story. Yeah. But I just happened to be at that point where I could finish one, then do this 4-page story, and then I can go back to Young and the Dead afterwards. So that's kind of, as far as for me, that's what I decided to do. But I bet but I've got tons of other side projects too that are other projects that I'm working on too. So it's just, for me, it's just kind of a matter of balancing it. And I just did a couple videos on how I'm kind of managing my goals and everything, and what goals I'm making. So
the Trello video, is that
yeah, the Trello, and then there's I got some comments saying that because it's titled "How to Reach Your Art Goals with Trello," and some people were saying, well, this is just kind of how to use Trello. But I mean, I'm demonstrating how I think how artists can do it. But if you kind of watch those 2 videos back to back, you'll see the process of me coming up with my goals.
Nice.
And then how I hopefully make them reality by using kind of planning everything out. So it's sort of a 2-parter, even though it's not. So anyone that was disappointed because it doesn't talk like specifically about art goals in the Trello video, that's all in the previous video. So
nice. So you can watch them both and get like a good perspective on both. In the chats, let's see. So Pepper said she loves the song being turned into a comic. Peter said all 3 stories sound so good, which is cool. So I'm glad. And then Pepper also said I guess she as well has to pare down a 6-page plan to a 4. That's hard. I think I had the advantage of it. It took me so long to decide on what I was going to move forward on that by the time I had decided, like, it was already a pretty clear 4-page limit. But I think I would have been pretty miffed at first, having to take like 2 pages out, because it's so like Corey and I were talking about this yesterday. But like for me, I get super intimidated by having to tell a story in a short amount of time. I'm just a long-winded person, and like long-form comics suit me really well. Short, like one-shot things like intimidate the hell out of me. But anyhow, so okay, so what's your kind of plan to what are you guys thinking for plans for like the next few days and so on, for like being able to execute this in time? Do you guys kind of have like a game plan for it? Have you kind of mapped out your goals for it, like, or are you just going to kind of proceed forward? I don't know. So what do you, Corey, have you kind of mapped something out?
Sort of. I mean, I don't know how well everybody can see this, but I don't plan well. And so this is as planned as I get. I have a dry Sharpie and a big giant, I don't know what size this is, but like, this is just one of those recycled notepad papers. And like, this is literally the script that I've written kind of in shorthand. And then I just draw 4 big rectangles for each page. And so I am kind of taking notes. Like you sort of see off to the side, like where I've kind of like made some notations, and then I'll change colors a little bit. But I find that if I use anything other than blunt instruments, like literally blunt, like Sharpies, and this is like a not sharpened, crappy. I think I just stole this from my daughter's pencil box. If I do anything that's precise, then I start noodling and doing details, and I'm not. And so what I do is I kind of go from this really coarse, and then I just start kind of like if anybody's ever whittled or done a sculpture or something, you start with a kind of a rough block, and then you just start like doing a bunch of passes where you start to just carve away things and you add detail and layers. And so that's kind of how I handle it. I've got my story basically, you know, and I started with, this page is going to introduce Ishmael. This page is going to introduce the crew and the ship. This page is going to be all of the battles. And this page will be kind of the resolution and bring us back to Ishmael. And so I write visually.
Yeah.
And the other thing that I try to do is I try to get the voices, anyone who's going to have dialogue, I try to get their voice in my head.
Yeah.
And I'm one of those people who will plot out the story, and I'll know that there are specific things that need to happen to get us there. And then I just kind of throw the characters in the room that need to be in that scene. And because I've spent the time to get to know them, I know how they would interact in that situation. And so the dialogue kind of comes relatively quickly, because I'm actually, I in the last week, I've listened to 6 short stories by Joseph Conrad, and I've re-listened to, some key chapters of Moby Dick. I've reread, I don't know if you guys have read this, but this is just a phenomenal book. This is Into the Silent Sea by Mike Mignola and Gary Gianni.
Oh, that looks
No.
Oh man, this is, let me just flip through some pages just for the eye candy of this. It's just incredible. And so anyway, I've got some original sketches that I don't want to fall out here. There's a Gianni original sketch if you guys are interested. But yeah, so here's like he goes through his process. And so he's got like shots from old movies. And then he'll incorporate like the dress of like how they did that, and then pencil it out. And so like here's a shot from like 20,000 Leagues Under the Sea, and he's got another movie, and so he watches old movies, and so it's kind of a similar thing. I've got some books on like how to properly rig a ship and things like that, and so I kind of go through this process where I do these deep dives into these rabbit holes and kind of immerse myself into like the visual language of the story that I'm telling. And then, when I know like why they rig, the foremast sail a specific way, and they rig it differently than the main sail. And then sometimes that can often come out in the storytelling. And I don't know how obvious that is to the reader, but it adds a level of authenticity to know that like a lot of that's happening. Like for example, the Pequod is the boat in is the ship it's a Nantucket whaling ship that's in Moby Dick. And one of the things that was really interesting about it is that it was destroyed in a typhoon in Japan prior to the Moby Dick story happening. And one of the owners rigged it with all the broken parts he replaced with whale ivory. And so it's this really ornate, kind of gaudy ship that is kind of an affront to nature, because it almost looks like a monster, because a lot of the railing along the side is made out of whale teeth. And then a lot of the mast work is made out of whale bone. And then Ahab's peg leg is also made of whale ivory. And so there's this whole like mystique. And so this is going to be like a major part, but like, had I not jumped into that weird deep dive of like, I wonder what the Pequod actually looks like, and done a bunch of research of like, what that looks like, that little nugget of information wouldn't have ended up in my brain to be able to come out in the plotting and the writing. Because what will actually happen is that the ship is going to play a part in these battles, you know, kind of like the Black Pearl, how it's been raised from the depths. It's sunk, it's dead, but it's been pieced back together and is curiously rigged through like magical things. And so I don't know if you can even call it a process other than just like I just get lost in research, and I actually have to cap that, because if I don't, I'll never start drawing or writing anything. And so I have something that I call like a day zero, where for some indefinite amount of time prior to where I say go, I just allow myself the freedom to explore anything and how it looks and why it looks that way, and like character designs, and you know, what's the difference between a naiad and a nymph, and you know, why do they have different things, and anyway, all that type of stuff. You know, is there a hierarchy in a pod of mermaids, you know, that type of thing. And so, and then once I have that all in my brain, then I try to fit it into the story. And so that's where like the limitation of the 4 pages is kind of helpful, because once I have all that and I start filling in kind of different things, visually, I can kind of like work some of that in. Oh, like, oh, this is where there's going to be, you know, this type of thing,
For sure.
you know, or whatever. And so I kind of, and that's where I need to stay really rough. And so that's the stage that I'll be at probably for the next 2 or 3 days, is in kind of like roughing this out. And then I will do 2 or 3 more passes on each page, kind of at the layout level. It'll start here. I'll take a picture of it with my phone. I'll redraw it digitally several times. And then I'll jump in on pencils and inks. And by that point in time, everything is pretty set in stone except little tweaks of dialogue. And so then it's kind of that downhill coast of just execution. And I'll probably get to that point. I would say late next week. And then the rest of it is just going to be pencils and inks.
Nice. Awesome. What about you, Scott? Any kind of timelines, tricks?
Yeah, I mean, like I said, I kind of went through and created kind of try to figure out all my goals and everything. So I have on my Trello board, I've got projects, and then one of my projects is the 100s Anthology too, and I've got due dates for everything that I set myself. So just to kind of give you an idea of where I am, and I kind of set myself, I'm going to try to get this. These are like the ultimate days they need to be done, according to me or whatever. But like the thumbnails, which I already sort of have, I'm going to kind of mess around with them a little more. But like for thumbnails, I said January 7th. I've got research and concept design, which I've kind of done a lot of already. And that's sort of what I'm doing right now. But I said January 14th for that. Page 1 and 2 rough pencils, January 28th. Page 3 and 4 rough pencils, because I'm doing them together, because like I said, it's kind of one spread. I said February 11th for that. Let's see, 1 and 2 type pencils, February 18th. 3 and 4 type pencils, February 25th. Page 1 and 2 inks, March 4th. 2 and 3 inks, March 11th. Lettering, digital cleanup, March 13th. I know this sounds probably boring to everyone, but you asked.
Scott, this is amazing to me that you're able to do this, because as soon as I start doing that, I want to shoot myself.
Well, this is to be honest, this is something new for me. I mean, I've always kept Trello as sort of a to-do list, but I kept hearing all the you know, the big successful people saying, "Oh, to-do lists don't work. You need to do calendars." So I'm like, well, to-do lists have done work for me, but maybe if I incorporate a calendar, it'll be even better. So that's why I'm trying to do both right now. And I found that you can add a Trello, add a calendar to Trello. So, but anyway, then, and so lettering, digital cleanup. When I say lettering, there's very little lettering, like I said, because it's all pantomime. But so that's March 13th, and then after that, it's kind of like I said, I'm doing the cover. So I've got cover, concept, and pencils. March 18th, 100 cover inks March 25th, and then April 5th I've got covers, color, and graphic design. So
that's awesome.
Yeah.
So you have it pretty mapped out. Mine's like less kind of specific than that. Like I'm basically I had the goal of like doing because I used to start with roughs in a very similar fashion to like what Corey was describing, where I'd kind of rough it out and kind of work simultaneously with like, although it does sound like you came up with your story arc and stuff first. But like for me, I found that like I really need a solid script to work from. I'm not like an artist who does well just kind of blindly drawing. Like I don't know, for me, like that would restrict, like for myself, that restricts my storytelling a little bit when I draw and write at the same time. So what I try to do is kind of write it out first, because then I know what I need to kind of achieve, and then what like the mood is and stuff like that. I'm kind of like at that point illustrating it. It also gives me the chance to like draft and redraft multiple versions, because with this I'll probably end up hand lettering it, and so I don't want to be doing a lot of like redrafting or like, you know, rewording of sentences or anything like that before the final execution, you know. So for me, I like I'm kind of I came up with the idea of trying to get the first draft of the script done. Since it's 4 pages, just do a page a day of scripting. And then I'm probably going to do 4 more days of like polishing up. Well, probably less than 4 days. In fact, tomorrow I'll probably just spend a little time doing a second draft of the script, might show it to some people. And then from there, I'm going to try to do thumbnails. You know, hopefully by the end of the month, I'll have thumbnails and like a good solid map worked out, if not rough pencils for like the 4 pages. But it's a weird thing for me because, you know, and I think you guys would attest to this too, but it feels like the best method with these kind of things is like kind of methodical, very step-based, because the more you kind of get it right at kind of the intro, like the better the final product is, you know? So I find that like a lot of my time on this is probably going to be spent in the development stage, you know? And then the fun part will be the inking. I think you guys are pretty much on board with that, where it's like the fun part's like when you get to the final drawing, you have all your rough drawings laid out and stuff. And you know, get to the final thing. So I think that I might actually do well to kind of book it with a calendar, you know? I don't know.
Yeah, I don't think people necessarily need to do what I'm doing, but this is sort of a new thing for me, and I want to see kind of how it works. But
it's inspiring though, because it sounds like a really good idea. Like thinking about it, like having some mini deadlines.
Yeah, because I always work better with deadlines. If I have a deadline, then I just don't miss deadlines. So even if I set it myself, hopefully it'll look the same.
Yeah, I think it will. I don't see why it wouldn't, because like yeah, I mean that sounds like a really cool thing. So I'm kind of excited to, maybe I'll try to kind of map that out and like give myself some dates where I have to have certain things done. So okay, what about trying to kind of tell your stories coherently? So like in 4 pages, you know, like Scott, you've got a crazy challenge because you're trying to do like you're trying to do a silent comic, and that's a really hard thing to pull off.
Well, there's kind of like a cheat. If anyone doesn't know what's going on, they can just go find the song lyrics and they can see. So it's like
nice. But that's still a heavy task, you know, because like I really love Roger Langridge's stuff, And one of the things I love is he does do actually a lot of silent strips where it's just like complete pantomime, you know, and it's so fun reading a comic that's silent, that works and tells a narrative. And I've tried to do it. I've done it once or twice, but I think maybe kind of came close to succeeding at the one. But it's, man, that's quite a challenge. But I think like it sounds like you kind of have your map and stuff. Do you have do you have everything scripted as well, or are you kind of working in thumbs and scripts?
Me?
Yeah.
Well, I mean, again, the script is just the song lyrics. I just look back at the song lyrics and I'll print them out, and then I'll kind of, you know, put highlighters on. Oh, this is going to be this particular section, or verse is going to be this panel or that.
Got it. So you're blocking out the action, like from the song.
But it's finding moments and which moments I'm going to focus on and how I'm going to portray that. And so there's a lot of different stuff going on. There's a bunch of different characters. Some that we don't really even. It seems like it's sort of told from the perspective of kids, where you assume there's kids involved, but we don't really know, because through the song, the hesitate to say protagonist, but the main character, he's just referred to as Daddy. But what's the storytelling approach where people can see? I mean, it sounds like it's from the perspective of the children, but they're not always with them, but I forgot what that's called, but like first or second I don't know.
Let's see. So it's told from the point of view of the kid? Well,
not necessarily. He's just referred to as Daddy. Maybe it could be somebody on the outside kind of looking in, but he's just referred to as Daddy. Person. So we assume there's kids involved, but there's never any mention of kids.
Yeah.
Yeah,
that sounds like third person. I don't know, Corey. Am I getting that wrong?
I'm terrible at that. I'm not sure.
Yeah.
It's probably third person. I think first person omniscient would let you kind of know what's going on, but it would be told from the point of view of somebody witnessing it.
Yeah, that might be that. I don't know. But anyway, so
nice. That's cool. So like, to me, is it bad to kind of have this viewpoint? Like when this first happened, I was like really excited about it, and at the same time I was like, oh man, because like I have a ton of stuff I want to do, and it's another thing, you know. How do you guys like fight that if you get it? And if you don't, like, maybe you could explain to me why that's terrible.
Well, I don't take things on that I don't want to do. And you know, I think we're all kind of the same that way. And so, because I have a day job that covers what I need it to cover, you know, if I didn't want to do this, I would have just said no.
Yeah, for sure.
But at the same time, I think, you know, there's still that thing of like, you know, we've trained ourselves to say no to so many things that would be fun to do anyway. That saying yes to an additional thing sometimes I think is kind of weird. But I mean, what I do is I just try to come up with something that's exciting about it. And I actually probably have a different problem than you, Josh, because I have like project ADD, you know, where if I were to work on one thing for 4 years, I don't know that I could. But if I can intersperse, you know, a sticker stint here, or a short comic here, or an animation here, like I almost have to do that. And so this for me is kind of like a nice break from a lot of the bigger projects that are going to take me, you know, half of the year.
Yeah.
You know, and so for me, I kind of look at this as a little bit of a vacation. Because one of the things that I found about myself is that if I don't have short wins every once in a while, I will lose steam. So I almost need to have those little, like, if I start to go astray a little bit, I'm like, okay, what can I do where I can get a bunch of like completions in a row really fast? And that's kind of the way I look at this, because I mean, I've got two major things that I'm going to do this year. I'm going to do another children's book, and I'm probably going to color the children's book that I finished last year, that I did only in inks. And both of those things are, the coloring will take me a couple months. The other children's book is going to take me 6 months if I'm fast. And so that I can knock out, within 100 days. I mean, I know that's a third of a year, but it's still significantly quicker. And so I almost look at it as a little bit of a break, a little bit of a vacation.
Yeah, I think I kind of came to that conclusion a little bit too, because I'm working on such heavy subject matter, and most of my comic deals with like mental illness, as like anybody who follows the show knows, but it's like really dark and heavy. And so it was fun to do something about my current life with, and about my son, and it's kind of, I mean, it's full of a lot of goofy banter between like a dinosaur who's like subconscious is forcing himself to like want to eat toys, and he's trying to fight that so he can get along with this little boy, and then he ends up freaking out and eating the toys. And I'm going to have these panels where some of the playing that the dinosaur and the boy are doing with these action figures are going to look like a B movie clip. So it'll look like a dinosaur like terrorizing a group of superheroes and stuff. And doing something fun and kind of goofy like that I know is going to have like a win at the end that's really quick is like really, it's funny because I did feel, I think this is a personality thing of mine. And I've talked about this on the show where I've been trying to get better at saying yes to things. And that continues to be a goal for this year. And this was definitely one of those things where my personality wants to just be like, no, it's a distraction. I can't have distractions, that kind of thing. But then I realized like how much fun it would be, and also just the people involved in it. There's so many good, people and people in our community that are going to be doing this that I was like, I'd be stupid to say no. And then the nice thing is now I'm getting the reward of like being able to write like a really fun story where the goal is like, it's not like super deep. It's pretty like the plot isn't super complex. There's not a lot of threads for me to tie at the end. And there's just like this real fun to that, to being able to kind of change it up and do something different. But yeah, it's funny like how hesitant I was at first to want to do it. I don't know. I think that's just. What about you, Scott? Like, did you have any hesitation, or were you just like, yeah, I'm on board?
It's not hesitation with this particular project. It's just all the things I want to do. It's like, okay, how do I get this done and still do the other stuff? Because this is something, that I'm going to commit to. So I've got to get it done. But there's a lot of other things I want to do. So, but nothing. Nothing where I was like, well, no, I don't want to do it. I wanted to do it. I just, trying to figure out how I can make it happen, I think is the thing. But it sounds like what you were talking about, it seems like I'm kind of in the same, or I'm in like the opposite, situation you are. Whereas, even though my story it's like a zombie story and it's horror-esque, it's still, it's got kids, so it's more of an adventure and everything. It's not super dark.
Yeah.
And this one's a lot darker, so it's kind of like the opposite of what you're dealing with, it sounds like.
Yeah, it is funny to think about that, because now that I think about it, that is kind of like a change in pace, like, and theme, but still fits your brand, but it's like, it's a little more heavy, which has got to be kind of fun. Yeah, it's weird. I think I want to do more of this kind of thing. I should wait and see how it goes with this thing, but I think I want to do more of this kind of thing, like little projects that are quick wins, on a yearly basis, because I do feel like personally, I'm excited getting further and further on my current comic, but it's like really, it's daunting after a while. So it's nice to have like something to change pace with. And so far it's been working for me to tack it on top of my regular comic work. But I'm curious when that's going to catch up, because I do know from previous 100 days, there is a point. It's like right around the middle where you just feel like, what the hell did I get myself into?
Yeah.
And I'm like, at that point, is it going to feel weird, like to kind of be balancing doing 2 of the 100 days? But I think not doing the videos, I'm just going to be using the streams to update my progress. I think that's going to take a lot of the burden off, because I think that was the biggest struggle I had with the 100 days, was doing like daily videos,
Yeah. And I'm going to do, I'll probably maybe do like weekly updates, but I'm not doing like daily videos. I just don't, that's something that, if I want to get the comic done, I'm not going to be able to do that. So.
Yeah. And I figure, I'll post my progress on Instagram. Are you guys do you guys have like a place you're going to post your daily progress, or are you just going to do a wrap up of all of it?
I'm probably going to do a weekly video, and then I usually just kind of talk about what's going on Twitter, but I don't have any plans for daily stuff, because I'm kind of in the same boat where I think all three of us are. We already have a daily practice of creating. Yeah. And so I don't need the challenge to drive me to work on this. And the accountability side is kind of like taken up on the 48-hour art check. And so for me, I have a tendency to, spend 3 hours making a video after I spend 2 hours working on the thing. And yeah. I don't have time to do the 2 or 3 projects that I'm working on right now and a video. And so at best, I think I'm going to do just like kind of a weekly wrap up, and then I'll just talk about what's going on Twitter. And I don't, Josh, you post a lot more. Like roughs on your Instagram than I do. I tend to gather everything and then post it at the end. Whereas, you're like, hey, here's the panels that I did today. And then the next day it's like, yeah, here's the lettering and stuff like that. Whereas, I post less frequently, but it's similar content. It's just less frequently. So it'll probably continue to be something along those lines.
Yeah. And I think that's a pretty smart approach, actually. It's like part of why I do that on Instagram is just another layer of accountability for myself, but I can't imagine that being like all that fascinating for people on Instagram, So I do feel like it's a bit self-serving, because, a lot of the time, especially with like what I'm working on right now is like blue lines, and then I'm going to put magenta lines over it that are like polishing that up. I don't know how interesting that is for people to see that like every day, and I think that might actually impede the growth of my Instagram, but it is a good way for me to keep movement going on this bigger story, and on even on the hundreds, it does keep me accountable, because I'm like, well, I gotta post something, Right. So for me, that's the only reason I do that, like frequent posting.
Well, I think you're pretty safe being self-serving on social media. That's
fair point.
I don't think that's bad, and I think it'll probably it probably impedes your growth, but it also narrows your audience down to people who are going to be very engaged with your projects, you know, because you're not going to get the people that are like, ooh, I'm going to get 2 pretty things a week. You know, you're going to get the people that are like really into process,
Yeah.
you know, or whatever, which is a different and more engaged audience.
Yeah, I would totally agree with that. And I think like you'll probably see like that changes a little bit once I've finished this book. Like I'll be posting much more kind of standard Instagram posts. But you know, for now it's like, and I think while I'm on the progress of anything, it's just a way to kind of, I think any mental trick, you know, I think we've all kind of learned that the hard way through, you know, doing projects like the hundreds and stuff, that like there are so many like mental tricks and gymnastics you can kind of go through to force yourself to maintain a habit, because we've all built it, you know. So it's like it's interesting. Like to me, it's interesting seeing how like everybody tricks themselves into continuing doing, you know, personal art projects, because it is, you know, wearing to kind of do. And so I think like you know, doing a calendar with set deadlines, like even though they're kind of like fake deadlines, but they're not, you know, because you've committed to them. I think that's pretty cool. And you know, to me, it's like the 48-hour art check. Any trick you can do to kind of force yourself to achieve what you're kind of hoping to achieve. Like, I don't know. I think that's a pretty good thing. So do you guys have any like worries about getting burnt out this hundreds, or you feel like, I got this in the bag?
I think if I were doing daily videos, I'd be concerned. But also, I mean, I've spent a long time getting pretty good at just doing a live stream. So even the videos, I don't even edit anymore. I edit on the fly while I'm live. And I know, you know, that Scott is he's got some of the similar equipment that I've got. And so I don't even know if the videos would take me as long. Like when I did the 100 Days of Animation, I don't even know how many hours I spent, but I mean, I was editing everything after the fact. And I started by doing animations, like, you know, like little simple ones, like having, you know, the day of the week, you know, kind of animate on and everything. And I've kind of gotten to the point where I understand the value of kind of simplifying that a lot. And so, and I've automated quite a bit of the video process. So I don't even think the videos would be as much of a big a deal as it used to be. But I don't know. I'm not sure. But I would definitely burn out if I were doing the videos the same way that I did it before, with like post-processing and editing and title graphics and, you know, all that I couldn't do that and do the children's book and do the animation stuff and start a new YouTube channel with tutorials. And it's just, that would be too much.
Yeah. I'm kind of in a similar boat. I think, you know, and I think out of all of us, like on my hundreds, I probably put in the least amount of time on my videos. And because I didn't edit like heavily, but just the minor editing I did. And at the time I was on an older computer, so it would take like 2 hours to upload, or like, you know, sometimes I just have to leave it uploading overnight. And, you know, having to do that on a daily basis, while it's surprising what you can kind of achieve doing that, like, I think that would be really hard to maintain. But yeah, I'm not feeling super nervous about kind of getting it. I think my main thing is just hoping that I can kind of maintain my workflow on the other projects too, you know?
Yeah, my main concern is making a cohesive story. And I think there's a little bit of a not that there's like a competition is the wrong word. But you know, Josh, you and I have talked about this off the air before, but I've been thinking about it a lot. And I think whenever I throw in with a bunch of other creatives, writers and artists and animators and all that, it kind of amplifies the what I want to produce, because I I compulsively want to stand out in everything I do. And so we've got 30 other people, you know, all talented, all different levels and different styles and different whatever. And my goal is to have a story that rises above, you know, the fray. And I would think that everybody's goal is that, you know, and which is going to make the quality of the book really good. And as I'm saying this out loud, it sounds really bad. It sounds like I'm trying to beat everybody, and that's not what I'm trying to do. What I'm trying to do is use that as a motivation to not phone this in, you know, because I could finish 4 pages in a couple days and it would look like crap, right? But I'm gonna like keep that in the back of my mind that there's going to be 30 other stories in this book. And so I'm going to nail every panel, like every page and every panel is going to be incredible because of that. So that's my main concern, is not that I'm not going to finish it, because it's going to get done. I finish things. But that when I do, that it might not be up to the standard that I want it to be at.
Yeah. How do you kind of feel about it, Scott? Are you wanting to kind of make, like, being in an anthology with other cartoonists and stuff, does that kind of give you like some motivation to like really up your game?
Yeah, definitely. I want to try, and not necessarily competition with other people or anything, but just sort of competition with myself. I want to do, because the style I use for Young and the Dead it's pretty simplistic, you know, it's kind of a little cartoony and everything. So this one, I just want to do something different. So I want to sort of stretch my muscles. I want to try to do some really cool stuff with the inks, especially when we transition into the Loch Ness Monster part. I want that to sort of, you know, have somewhat of a different look, a lot darker, because it's going to be a lot of shadows and things like that. And so I just want to try some different things. So
yeah,
I guess my goal is when people look at this, maybe they don't recognize that it's me, you know, right away. That's something entirely different, you know. I don't know if that, because it's difficult, because like where I might think it looks a lot different, like people tend to pick up on your style more than I think you do. So a lot of times I'll try to do something different, and they said, "Oh yeah, that looks just like the thing you did before." So I don't know. We'll see.
That's a good point, actually. You know, because like a lot of us as artists are like concerned about style and stuff like that, and probably more aware of our own like stylistic shifts, even if they're like really subtle. But you're right, like to most people, they may not even pick up the differences, you know, that maybe you're sweating about or whatever, when you're making stuff. That's pretty awesome. I like, for me, I totally am there. Like and not in a competitive, like, you know what it is? I should say it is competitive, but not like a bad competitive. Like I want everyone in the anthology to hopefully do something that's better than anything I could do, because that would be a cool anthology to be in, you know?
Yeah.
So that's the goal, is like, I hope everybody brings their A game, you know? Because I want to, and I think by doing that, like, you know, I definitely have the hope of, it would be nice if it ends up being one of the better ones in the book, but what would be even more ideal is if like everything in the book is everybody's best stuff. Because if that's the case, then you're going to have a really strong book. And then it is one of those like rising tide raises all ships kind of thing.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, I definitely like, I never want to be because I've been in a couple anthologies in the past, as in, oh my gosh, now I'm blanking out. It was a long time ago, but there's an anthology that, oh my gosh, what was it called? It was based on Craigslist's. Oh, it was called Misconnections. And it was edited by Julia Wirtz and put out through like Random House. And I did a short thing for that. And I remember like it wasn't one of the best in there, but it was definitely not one of the worst in quality. And I remember feeling like this relief that it wasn't one of the worst. That might sound terrible, but it's like, I will say that's definitely my goal is like, I don't want my one comic to be the one where they're like, why'd this guy get in there? You know, like,
All
and I
of
don't
these
mean
are
the
amazing, but
in the
this
anthology. I mean, the readers, you know, where they're like, all these great people are in here. And then there's this guy, you know, like, so yeah. Yeah, that's definitely a motivator for me too. And it's one of the things I love about anthologies, but I don't do a lot of them. And so anymore. And so like, I think this will be a nice, breath of fresh air, cause it's always fun to do, you know? And like I said, I never want to be that one comic. That is one of my fears going into this. And do you guys ever have that thought where you're like, what if mine's like the worst one?
I think that's just like imposter syndrome 101, right? That's just basic that you don't belong and everybody else
Exactly. Yeah.
belongs there and you don't. Yeah. So yeah, that's kind of my mode of thinking all the time in any situation. So
this will be the comic where they realize I shouldn't be doing comics.
Right. This is the one where they're going to be like, what the crap?
Yeah.
Well, the thing I like about this particular anthology is that it's more the barrier for getting in isn't necessarily that you're the best artist. It's that you can complete and you can deliver a project. No one's in this book that isn't able to create and deliver a project. So there's going to be all different, you know, skill levels and everything. And I think that's cool because, you know, it's going to, some people that maybe are kind of newer that are starting out, they're going to be able to get featured along with a lot of other people and get some more eyes on their stuff and everything.
Yeah.
So I'm not really too concerned about quality as long as everyone kind of gives it their all, and I think everyone is. I think if you are somebody that's maybe hasn't been doing it for over 20 years like me or whoever, or not that that's, you know, I know people doing comics a lot less than me that are way better than me, so that's probably not the best metric, but I just think it's cool that you know, that people from just all the different skill levels are going to be able to be represented in everything. And like I said, I mean, everyone's proven that they can deliver a comic and that they can complete a challenge and continue to do something. And I think that's something I think that's original to this particular anthology. So.
Yeah, and I would actually say that's one of the more relieving things about this anthology, because there have been many times, like especially when I was starting out as a cartoonist, where I would be part of an anthology and the whole thing would fall apart because like half of the contributors wouldn't deliver. And, you know, like the editors would be freaked out and stuff like that. And it's really hard to put together an anthology. But the thing I like about this group is I have no doubt like the majority of creators on it are going to actually deliver. And that's a pretty like, that's a pretty huge thing, because like most anthologies have like a pretty high, is it recidivism? Am I using the wrong word?
I don't know.
That's the word that you use to repeat offenders, right?
Oh, okay. Well, I guess a high, they just have a high dropout rate, meaning like, you know, generally like most anthologies, like, you know, most people, not most people, but a good percentage of the people aren't going to finish when it's due date time. And the thing I like about the hundreds is like these people have finished the 100-day challenge, and a lot of them have finished it multiple times. So you know they're gonna bring their A game to this, you know. And I do like what you were saying, Scott, because I think one of the other nice things about the variety of people on here is like you'll have, you know, we'll have people who've been published in books before and distributed and stuff like that, right alongside with like people who this might be their first printed thing. And that creates like a real. I actually think even for the competitive streak, it creates kind of a want to do your best work because, like if this is somebody's like first publication, they're going to bring their A game, because it's like it's their first chance to kind of get it out there. And so I think, I don't know, I do think there's something really special about the hundreds. I also think there's something great about the community because while I think everybody has a sense of healthy competition, like all artists, they're not like, nobody in the hundreds wants to see somebody fail at the hundreds. Right. Mm-hmm. I've never seen anybody who like gave up on the hundreds, like, responded to in like well, good, I'm glad that guy's gone, kind of thing. And that's actually pretty rare in a group too. And I think that's one of the things I really like about the community is like everybody's really interested in seeing everyone else succeed and kind of like helping them succeed. Like, like I definitely have seen multiple times where somebody's in a hole and they're like trying to get through the hundreds challenge and they're facing trouble, getting like cheerleaded on by that group, and I think that's something really unique and cool about it. And I think that makes this a fun process too, because hell, if I like hit a wall on like page 3 of this and go like, I made a mistake, and I feel like lost or something like that. Like I know like every contributor on this is going to have my back and be interested in kind of seeing it get done, I don't know. That's pretty cool.
Yeah. And fairly uncommon for a group of people that for the most part have never met in person and only know each other on the internet.
Yeah.
The internet just seems to be just a horrible place for people just tearing each other to shreds. But what you're saying is absolutely true. Like, I want to do the best that I possibly can, not to beat everybody else out. But at any point in time, if I saw anybody in this group struggling, like there's not a lot I could do, but I would do what I can, which is mostly encouragement. Yeah. And I don't think that there's anybody in the group that would do otherwise. And so that I like that you brought that up because it is a really that in and of itself and what Scott said is something significantly different. Like there's no, for this anthology, there's no like fame gatekeeping, like there's no one that's like, you must have this many followers or you have to be important or whatever. Like it is an interesting metric just to have finishers be the metric. That is a fascinating way to look at this. I hadn't even thought about that.
Yeah, that's very cool. All right. Well, do you guys feel like we've like is there something else we should hit about this anthology, about our kind of undergoing it?
I don't know. I mean, I think like if we're going to kind of do this and we're going to have other people on, we're probably going to have more opportunities to talk about some of this stuff too. So
for sure,
the challenge is going to be keeping it fresh, and hopefully just the fact that we're having different people on and finding out what their process is and everything, that will kind of solve that problem. But
yeah, and like to me, I think I'm excited about these upcoming weeks, having different people on who are working on projects for this, because I think that just hearing the 3 stories of like our 3 stories kind of side by side, and the variety of plots and genres and kind of approaches makes me really excited, because I'm like, well, to me, it's like I feel pretty good about these 3 stories being in the anthology. I can't wait to see what other people are kind of approaching and what they're doing and what they're going to bring to the table. I think that's going to be really fun. So, and definitely motivational to really, like I said, kind of bring our best to what we're doing. So cool. Well, so should we wrap it up then? Did everybody kind of get anything I missed? Anything you guys wanted to touch on?
Can I just say something that I need people to know, because I learned it and it's so fascinating to me, but it's not going to make it into my story?
Go for it.
I was going to do this whole story about, and this, I know this sounds super boring and it's probably why I didn't do it. There's a fascinating history to the development of the whaling harpoon. And I was going to tell this whole story around how that happened, but at one point in time, they just threw sharpened sticks, and that didn't work. And then so somebody said, "Well, let's put a barb on it," and so then it stuck, but it didn't like pierce the blubber, and so because they had two barbs on either side, and then there was just one barb, and that worked pretty well. And then someone put a hinge on the barb so that when it went in, it would be like a sharpened stick, but when it pulled back, it would hinge and grab out. And then they weren't killing the whales quick enough, and this is where I was going to tell the story. And so then they thought of attaching a grenade to the harpoon, and so they would harpoon the whale, and then the impact would explode inside of the whale. But then the whale started sinking, and so they would kill the whale, but it would sink, and it would sink the ship with it unless they cut the line. Huh. And so then somebody said, "I still like the idea of the grenade, but I think we need to like inflate the whale so that it floats." And so they attached grenades with oxygen inside of the grenade, and so you'd throw it and it would pierce the whale and blow up, and then fill the whale full of air, and the whale would float to the surface. And then that was about the time that they started coming up with steam powered whale machines, or whaling machines, rather than ships that were wind powered. Anyway, there's this whole fascinating thing. And then there was kind of this resurgence of people saying, I think just a single barb is the best way to go. And they got away from the grenades and everything. But like, there was this whole thing, and there's no outlet for me to do that other than right now. And I just wanted everybody to know that at one point in time, you had air inflating grenade harpoons that people were throwing off of the sides of ships at giant fish. And it's just fascinating. So anyway, that has nothing to do with anything, but I just needed everybody to know that.
No, dude. Yeah, I mean, like that's the kind of thing I love to hear, because that's completely like that makes me want to go into a wormhole of just researching and
right. It's crazy.
Yeah, I remember a few years ago when I read about the turtle. Did you ever hear about like the turtle?
You're talking about the Civil War submarine?
Yeah, they had like a submarine that never actually was like, they never actually used it. There's like myths that they used it, but they never actually put it on, like I think they did put it underwater, but it never actually worked. But it was like this bicycle run, like egg shaped thing. And if you look at like the schematics of this, it just looks like, something straight out of like a parody magazine or something, or like a steampunk, version of a submarine. And I got so fascinated by that. It's weird, even on like in trying to come up with themes for this. I was reading through a bunch of Americana and like old folklore and stuff, and I had like forgotten about like Johnny Appleseed and all those stories. Right. And so I was like reading about that, and then I'm like, what am I doing? Like I finally, it was like, the 31st, and I was like, okay, I gotta pitch something and commit to something, because otherwise I'm gonna go down that like rabbit hole and never come back,
Yeah.
Yeah. All right, cool. Well, thanks. I guess Keeman in the chat said she's going to start her 100 days probably this year, but around summertime. So cool. I'm glad to see you're going to do your 100 days. And thanks for everybody who joined us in the chats. It's awesome. To everybody in the hundreds, we're going to be reaching out to most of the people involved in the second anthology. So if you're hearing this, feel free to reach out to us, or just like comment in the comment section. Let us know you'd like to be on the next Artcasters, and we'll try to kind of like get you guys scheduled in, so we can have these conversations with everybody who's going to be in this book, and just kind of ramp up to when we finally get this thing completed and we get to see what everybody did. So thanks, Corey, for joining us. And so let's do the round. You're on my channel. You know where to find me. So just if you haven't, subscribe, and also go to topis.io, and you can add quarterly stories to your library there, or go to quarterlystories.com, whichever your reading preferences are. Corey, where can everybody find you?
You can find me on YouTube and Instagram, and on my website at coreykerr.com. Pretty much just Google my name, CORYKERR, and those three things will come up. But yeah, hit me up on my website, and if you want to have like a really in-depth conversation about weird seafaring things, that's like where my mind's at right now. So let's talk on Twitter. Go dive into some Wikipedia articles, and we'll like find a monster. I have a panel that right here. They need to be fighting somebody, and I don't know who they're fighting yet. And so find me a sea monster and talk to me on Twitter. That'd be the best thing right now.
Nice. All right. And then Scott, where can everybody find you? And if people are kind of getting confused about how to figure out like whose channel this show's on, because it alternates, how can they kind of solve that problem?
Oh, so that's real easy. All you have to do is go and look in the description of this video, and there's a link to our mailing list for the Artcasters. And we don't spam you or anything like that, but what we do is usually about 30 minutes before we go live, we send out an email with a link to where we're going to be, because as Josh alluded to, we switch back and forth from his channel to my channel, usually on Thursdays, but sometimes it's on a different day. So if you don't want to, miss out, then join that mailing list. And other than that, you can find me at circworks.com. I'm also at Circworks on YouTube. And yeah, and like I said, and just to reiterate what Josh had mentioned, if you are going to be featured in the 100 Days of Making Comics Anthology, reach out to either me or Josh, and we'll try to schedule in, and if we haven't had you on the show before, we'll probably want to just at least kind of email back and forth and kind of figure out what, because we don't want every single episode to just be about the 100s. We still want to kind of keep a topic, or else I think people might start tuning out. So kind of what exactly you want to talk about as far as the comic and some other things like that. So we'll figure all that out, but just go ahead and send us a message.
All right. Well, it was fun hanging out with you guys. All right. We will see everybody in the chat next week. And Corey, I'll see you tomorrow.
All right.
All right, guys. Bye.